Welcome once again. South Africa's ruling African National Congress has celebrated its 111th anniversary with events in Mangaung, a Free State province, where the organization was founded in 1912. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was re-elected as the ANC party leader at the national conference in December last year, addressed a large crowd of supporters at the stadium, outlining how the party plans to address the country's many challenges and promised to heed the call by tripartite alliance members to end corruption in government.
Government needs to eradicate corruption and to remove regulatory barriers and build an effective developmental state. I must say that the messages that have been delivered by our alliance partners, as in COSATU and the SACP, are very clear on this matter. We will continue to heed your messages, which you have articulated very clearly, about the government, our movement taking steps to rid corruption out of South African life. Community-based organizations, traditional leaders, religious formations, and other social formations must play a leading role in mobilizing society in support of building inclusive social compacts that will deal with a variety of matters that are challenges to our people.
The ANC is the oldest liberation movement against colonialism in Africa and led South Africa's transition from white minority rule to democracy after it was unbanned in 1990. The ANC president also said the fight to curb the high unemployment rate is not governments alone and called on the banking and private sectors to come on board. Now, the anniversary comes amid a decline in electoral support for the party due to, among other things, rising levels of unemployment and poverty, as well as failure to provide basic services to poor communities and lack of economic growth.
To deconcentrate ownership and control of the economy, we need to increase investment and improve access to finance for Black-owned businesses and SMEs. We need the financial sector to come to the party and help to finance Black-owned businesses. It is a national crisis that the unemployment rate among young people who are aged between 15 and 24 years is nearly 60%. And this has to be addressed with urgency.
And there you have it. And that was, of course, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa. Interestingly, the ANC has been in the spotlight of conversations in the past year, especially as regards the Farmgate scandal that have in some way be leveled against Cyril Ramaphosa. Osage. Now, some would consider it very interesting to see that if you look at Cyril Ramaphosa's coming into power, he came into power on the mandate of taking away or eradicating corruption, right? Doing away with corruption. His predecessor, of course, had a huge corruption scandal against him, like series and series of corruption allegations leveled against him. And the people of South Africa were quite excited to see him come in. And the ANC had put in structures, allegedly, to deal with corruption. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa came into power, and then the Farmgate scandal came up. And, you know, many South Africans have expressed views to lead towards the fact that, you know, they haven't actually upheld their own end of the promise, because there was an investigation conducted, there was a report conducted. Initially, it seemed like he was going to step down after the results of the report were publicly announced, and all of a sudden, ANC took a 360, said we're throwing their full weight behind him. He was re-elected again to lead the ANC for 2024, and there we have it. You know, it's interesting that he is talking about fighting corruption, but the people of South Africa haven't been too convinced that the ANC is indeed fighting corruption, indeed and in truth.
I think, yeah, that's pretty much a summary of, you know, the response to President Ramaphosa's promise to fight corruption. You know, the ANC, of course, you know, began since, what, 1994 with Nelson Mandela as their first, you know, the first president back then. But I would say arguably that the quality of politicians and leaders of the ANC has dipped, since Nelson Mandela. There's not really been any leader of the ANC and of course president that has been able to hold the same standards that Nelson Mandela had. But another thing is, the ANC basically it almost gives me the perfect, like a mirror image of what corrupt, governments across the world that say one thing and do it, completely the other. Governments across the world that, seem to have more of propaganda and, political statements working for them than actual, work. If you look at the celebration of the 111th anniversary of the ANC, you would see something that has been scheduled. It's the ANC Presidential Golf Day. It says here, category 1, ball to play with the president. You pay 350,000 rand for that. Category 3, ball to play with premiers and ministers, 75,000 rand. Category 3, ball to play with NEC members, 75,000 rand. Category 4 is ball to play with PEC members, 50,000 rand. And so basically, this is almost like you bring this amount of money and then you have access to the president, or you have access to these level of ANC members, politicians, cabinet members, and the likes, which almost feels like corruption. And if you look at the way that they mass corruption in developed nations, it comes with book launches, donating to your son's project, donating to your NGOs and stuff like that. That's how it simply is maxed. So I don't think the current ANC leadership and the current South African government has lived up to its promise of fighting corruption, and has also been able to convince the people of South Africa that it is truly against corruption. Sadly, you hear these things with almost every government that is stepping into power. There's always a promise to fight corruption. Unfortunately, out of 100 governments that get into power with that promise, maybe 1 or 2 that actually fight corruption. So it's not, if you look across the reactions to this, more than half, a good 80% of the people who are reacting to the Cyril Ramaphosa statements do not believe what he's saying, do not really trust in the ANC, and do not see that they truly are going to be fighting corruption. Well,
Julius Malema and the likes are there to
keep
them accountable. I mean, he did tweet recently saying that even at their own conference, they couldn't amend their constitution because they couldn't get 2/3 majority of the delegates to do so. So governments around the world and people must realize that the office of the citizen is the highest office of the land, and must continually hold government responsible and accountable to not just the promises they have made, but to their responsibilities.